Welcome back to Everything Whiskey. I'm Callum,
And I'm Sam.
and today we're having a look at the Gospel Solera Rye.
Alrighty, the Solera Rye was something that we got misled into thinking was American because it was in the American portion of the whiskey section in Dan's.
At least
Figured
our
out that it was
local
Australian.
one.
Yeah, our Dan's. I don't know what everyone else is doing. But basically, it is an Australian company called the Gospel. Really nice bottle design. This specific one is their Solera Rye, 42%.
0.5.
It's an 0.5.
Yeah.
Can't forget the 0.5.
Helps a whole lot.
So it's pretty interesting. Basically, they're using all Australian Mallee rye. It's a very high rye mash bill. It's 100% rye.
Mm-hmm.
They don't say where the rye comes from, but it's in one of the driest regions of Australia, which is one of the driest regions in the world.
Yep.
So
It's
nice
just past
crispy
Mildura.
rye, hardy rye, is it?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the Mallee,
And then Mallee rye. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're right.
Yep.
And then they ship it all to they double distill it, ship it all to Melbourne, which is our neck of the woods, and then they basically age it in like their old red brick building that is using their Solera kind of system, which is basically you have, from my understanding, Solera system is basically where you have, a certain amount of a certain age of whiskey in one barrel, and then they pour that into another, some of it into a new barrel, and then another stuff comes into the barrel that's got also older stuff in it.
It's
and
like
then
an
they keep
infinity
kind of
barrel,
cycling
isn't
it. Yeah, like it's
Basically.
always, yeah, and it ends up where like there's nothing there that's ever been less than the minimum age, 5 years or whatever, we'll just say.
Mm-hmm.
After a few cycles, it ends up being that the youngest whiskey in there is 5 years, but it's also mixed in with ones that are maybe 20 years. It just depends on how you do it. That's my understanding. And the barrels they're using are ex-bourbon barrels, and Australian wine barrels, which is very interesting and very, very smart. I don't see why any Australian company or distillery would not utilize the massive wine industry that we have to kind of take advantage of really fantastic quality wine barrels. So it's a great idea.
I'm finding this weird because, from your experience, what would you give as classic rye notes?
Spicy, kind of like green notes. You're getting like cardamom, kind of, what's the eucalyptus kind of notes.
Black tea, kind of. Just
else?
along those kinds of lines.
Tea notes.
What I'm getting to is that I don't get any of that in this. This
No,
is very...
I was gonna say, yeah,
this is very
that's what
sweet.
I was getting
Very sweet.
It's
Almost
got
like...
rye notes, but not those. Does not taste like a typical rye at all.
I mean,
It's
it's
dark.
Australian rye. It's normally typically
so it's a
American,
different
so
thing,
obviously
but it's
it's going to
not-
be different. But
It's, if you're expecting an American rye, this is not what that is.
no.
It's definitely got like cool, more spicy notes and stuff compared to something that's more like, a single malt that's, got a strong barley kind of presence in its mash bill.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not your typical traditional style of rye.
This is very vanilla on the nose with a bit of caramel as well. It's very sweet.
It's really sweet on the nose, but it's also dark. Like it's like
bread.
It's like dark chocolate with these bready notes.
Yeah. It's like sourdough,
Like
almost.
It's sourdough with some like cocoa powder
Yeah.
and a lot of sugar.
Yeah, with a lot of sweetness up front, which I wouldn't have expected. But the herbal notes come through a bit more on the taste.
Yeah.
Nowhere near to the extent as like an American rye would, but
It's spicy. Not spicy. It's sweet.
Yeah.
It's super sweet. Yeah, it's nice and dark. Like it's dark and rich.
Yeah.
But it is kind of like, it's like, I don't know, maybe it's the wine barrel impact. It's kind of like softened the spices and pulled out more sweet, dark notes, because it's definitely it's giving me like a port kind of impacty kind of thing. I don't know. Rich dark fruits I'm getting.
Yeah, well, from like the fortified wine, the rich dark. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. Bit of pepper as well. There's like some not spice as in cardamom and all that, but I'm getting pepper kind of spice.
It's like peppery oak impact kind of thing. Oaky spice, wood tannins and stuff.
I mean, to be fair,
It's a little bit of cloves now. A little bit of like that nutmeg clove stuff coming through now.
I did get cardamom, but I thought it was a one-off, so I didn't mention it. But it might be hidden away back there somewhere with those classic rye spices. I'm pleasantly surprised by this, by the way. I think it's Australia's only rye. That might be a big statement. Might be making
That's
myself
probably incorrect, but it's
that's the only Australian rye I've ever seen. They do another one, the straight rye, which we should probably try because I actually really like this.
Yeah, definitely. How much was this, by the way?
$75. So it's pretty relatively cheap for an Australian.
That's all right. That is totally reasonable. $70, $80 is totally reasonable, especially for Australian whiskey.
Yeah.
And especially for like new kind of things, like 100% Australian rye, Solera cask. Like it's, it's not the typical stuff you hear. So I wouldn't have any issues spending that, especially because it's actually really good. It was too sweet up front for me, but as I'm like...
it's dissipating the more I acclimate to it.
Yeah, I'm acclimating to the sweetness. I'm getting the other notes underlying. Because a lot of the time you get sweet ones and they're like, it's too much and you try and acclimate to the sweetness to get the other notes, but a lot of the time there's actually not other notes underneath. You sometimes come up, dry and there's just not really a whole ton of complexity and layering going on.
It's just hit me to what it actually is. It's just fruitcake. Sorry to cut you off, but it is fruitcake. Like, the nose is just pure fruitcake. Like raisins or sultanas that we call brown sugar.
Yeah, and like the
all
cinnamon
that kind of stuff.
And nutmeg and stuff. Like, yeah, I get that, yeah.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah, it's nice. I don't even know what was I even talking about?
I have no idea. I wasn't listening. I was focused on, what is that?
You weren't even listening anyway. Right. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember.
Ooh!
I think this is good.
Bit of licorice. That's got licorice on the very back end. The more this opens up, the more nose.
But only because
flavors.
You're mentioning it. I don't know if I'm actually getting it or if it's just psychosomatic. I'm happy with this. I'm surprised about it because I wasn't expecting much, really. I don't know.
I mean, I've seen both of them.
I just wasn't expecting a ton.
I've seen both of them, but I would normally go for other things. I would normally scan over them and not even really consider it. But
well,
I was there and I was like,
for me, the reasoning behind that is with Australian whiskey, it's either expensive and good, cheap and bad, or expensive and bad. There's not really cheap and good. There's not, except for some Starwoods that I've come across. We haven't really liked Ned's at all. There was like another one that we didn't like. Starwood has been the one that's consistently pulled out affordable ones that we've been able to enjoy.
Baker Hill was expensive and hit and miss.
Baker Hill was expensive and it wasn't our thing. We want to try Lark and there's a lot of other ones. And we've got a few. We've got a few Hellier's Road coming through soon, which we'll do. But again, we haven't tried those yet, and they're not budget. They're not as cheap as this. So, it's kind of for me. I look at it and I see it, and I'm like, cheap Australian or cheap-ish Australian. Probably not like. I was expecting something like 23rd Street, like that kind of like.
Oh yeah, I thought
they were doing just a bunch of sourcing, like rye from America, and they were just kind of handing it off as their own.
Yeah.
But it's not that at all. They're actually doing everything themselves, and it's really good. It's really complex. Like it's a lot more complex than I was expecting. There's a lot of layers going on. But it is very sweet. You could definitely have this as a dessert. Kind of like sipper instead,
even in like a cocktail
along the same lines. Exactly. It's kind of got like a rummy presence, but not rum. I don't know how to.
Why'd you say that? I hate that nose of rum, and I just got it as investment. Yeah. Why'd you say that?
we I don't know. We can't stand rum straight. Like it just doesn't agree with us for some reason. But it's got that kind of. It doesn't taste like rum, but it could replace rum in a cocktail or in certain scenarios, certain cocktails. It could replace that. It's got the similar kind of vibe that it could work well. But yeah, I'd like to try this on ice as well. I reckon it would stand up to it because it's quite rich and sweet. Alrighty, so that one was pretty surprisingly good, and we're going to stick with Gospel, try some other releases from them. We're really happy with our experience so far. Really nice, rich whiskey. We'll definitely buy again. But yeah, we've got not much else to say about this one, so we'll probably wrap it up here. Try and keep these Zoom videos a bit shorter just because they're not as interesting. But yeah, if you like this episode, leave us a like. If you want to see future episodes from us, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. If you do, we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.